Hi, everybody. Welcome. I am Luz Donahue hosting Corey Huff's The Abundant Artist webinar today on content marketing for artists. Super excited.
Hey there, everybody. This is Corey. I'm glad you're here today. This is going to be a lot of fun. So, a few things, Luz, to keep in mind as we're
Mm-hmm.
as we're running through, as we're getting started here. Um, you know, just to remind everybody why you're here, we're going to talk about content marketing and what that means and why it's important to artists. We're going to talk a little bit about the mindset of successful marketing and successful artists. And Luz, I think you're going to be a big help in that with your ebook, which we'll talk about here in just a bit. And if everybody who is on there, oh my, there are so many of you. We're so excited that you're here. If y'all could just in the chat or in the questions, just make sure that that you can hear me. Just click yes or hi in the chat. Um, Excellent. Everybody's like, yay, I can hear you. Okay, awesome. So I'm glad you can all hear. Glad you're all there. Thanks so much, everybody. Okay, so we're also going to go through what makes people buy it. We're going to talk about what makes people buy art. And then we're going to talk about some case studies. We're going to show you some really cool examples from artists who are making it happen themselves. So looks like a bunch of you have already figured out how to ask questions. If you are new to GoToMeeting or haven't figured it out yet, in that little software that's popped up on the top right hand of your screen, the little yellow GoToMeeting software, there's a question box there. You can type in your answers there. Everybody that's on right now is muted. Feel free to if I raise a question for you, feel free to type that into the questions. I may wait on answering a question until we get a little further in. And then at the end of the webinar, we'll unmute some people and we'll take live questions for anybody that still has those questions. So without too much further ado, Luz, unless you think there's anything else we need to cover.
Yes, I actually am glad that we stopped. I just wanted to bring it up because it's happening to me, so I'm wondering if it might be happening to some of the other attendees.
Okay.
I am not able to actually see anything from the chat box right now, so I don't know if that's some kind of a setting, but I wanted to address it since it's kind of needed.
Uh, I think that I can see the questions.
Okay,
Okay. All right.
well, cool.
Cool. All right. Before we jump in, one last thing, everybody. If you're on Twitter and you love Twitter, feel free to tweet some of your favorite bits. That means that you use the hashtag TAA webinar. Got a couple people saying they can't see anything. You may need to sign out and sign back in, Jane. Luz, I'm assuming you can see everything fine on your end.
I'm seeing the whole thing, but not the chat. That's the only thing
That's
I'm
fine.
missing.
But you're seeing the screen. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
perfect. So, what is content marketing? It sounds like a marketing buzzword, and it's definitely all the rage right now. So, let's just have a brief history of content marketing. So, back in the day, in the early 1900s, everybody had gelatin. It's a very common food ingredient, and a company called Jell-o decided that they wanted to sell gelatin and sell a lot of gelatin. So they not only did they give themselves a brand name and had a fun little name, they also put out a cookbook, Jell-o, America's most famous dessert, and that cookbook showed people how to use Jell-o, how to use gelatin in their cooking. And the cookbook was a wild success. Not only did they sell a whole bunch of the cookbooks, but they also sold a whole bunch of Jell-o because of that cookbook. And that cookbook is what helped establish Jell-o as a brand. A little bit later, and there's lots and lots of examples here. I'm only going to give you a little overview. A little bit later, in the 1980s, Marvel Comics was approached by a company that wanted to sell plastic army men. And in order to sell those plastic army men, they partnered with Marvel to create the G.I. Joe comic book. And that comic book was wildly successful. went on to sell millions and millions of plastic figurines, and also become a very popular television cartoon and movie franchise. All because they instead of just having plastic army men, they created a whole story and created individual identities for each of the characters. This was very, very popular and very successful for the GI Joe franchise and for Marvel. Some good contemporary examples: Nike Plus. So when the iPod came out and became really successful, Nike partnered with Apple to create an app for the iPod that would track how far you ran, how much exercise you did, how many calories you burned. And that helped. One, it helped sell the iPod because people could have their music player and their fitness tracker in the same device. And then also, it helped Nike get more brand recognition by being in front of people all the time when they were exercising and listening to music. So these examples go on and on. My very favorite, and this is the last example, my very favorite example of great content marketing is a little company based in Orem, Utah, called Blend Tech. And I like the Blend Tech example, one, because I have a family member that works at Blend Tech, but two, Blendtec was this relatively unknown blender company. Most of their sales were commercial sales, and blenders aren't super sexy to sell. So Blendtec came up with this hilarious idea of putting videos on the internet to see what they could blend. And they started out by blending pretty simple things like heavy fruits and rakes and other sort of non-traditional objects. And then they did this video of blending an iPad where they broke the iPad in half and they ground that thing down with the blender. And it got millions and millions of hits. And within a couple of years, Blendtec's retail sales went up 600%. These viral videos were insanely popular for Blendtec. So what does all of this content marketing background have to do with you as an artist? So content marketing is making what you do, whether it's art or blenders or something else, interesting in other contexts besides sitting by itself on a shelf. One of my favorite bloggers, his name's Mark McGinnis, said that people are looking for online content that is original and remarkable, and that the less it looks like advertising, the more effective it will be at advertising, because people are looking for real, genuine experiences, right? So people buy art because of the emotional connection that they have with art. If you can display your art on the web in such a way that people can find an emotional connection with it, if you can give people an understanding of your art so that they can have an emotional connection with it, you'll find that you'll be very, very successful as an artist. So I want to talk about an example of an artist who is very good at content marketing, Gwenn Seemel. Gwenn is an artist, a painter based in Portland, Oregon, where I live. And Gwenn is one of my very favorite artists. And Gwenn, a few years ago, 2 years ago, she started this series called Crime Against Nature. And she, in her blog, when she started the series, she started a Kickstarter project to raise money to start the project. And in those videos and the initial sketches that she did, she talked about why she wanted to create this series and why she was calling it Crime Against Nature. You can go to her blog and read all about it, 2 years worth of blog posts, but I'll just sum it up for you. Gwenn herself struggles with some health issues that have caused her to have some fertility problems and some other issues. And so she started questioning what her role was as a woman and what she should be doing in her gender role. She started questioning her gender roles. So Gwenn started looking around in nature and thinking about, what else are there other species in nature that deal with these unexpected gender issues, or do they not conform to what we think are normal gender roles? And she found lots of examples of animals that don't do what we think animals normally do. She found some monkeys that engage in homosexual behavior, and she found male deer that don't have huge antlers, and lots of other examples. And so she started creating these paintings. And rather than letting these paintings just stand on their own, she started she would relate each painting to this experience that she was having of dealing with various gender issues. And then she put all of those paintings and all of this story that she had created into a book that she sold as an ebook online, as well as a physical book that people could buy. And she did some other things like she would put up videos for each of the new paintings that she sold and talk about what the painting meant to her and a little story background on the painting. And Gwenn has had phenomenal success with this. She's been invited to speak in scientific conferences and been featured on huge websites like Boing Boing, which is a very popular blog that talks a lot about science. She's been tremendously successful with her content marketing just by giving people a way into her art and helping them understand a little bit about her and her background. So let's unpack that a little bit. How can you, if you're not in a position like Gwenn, how can you learn to do some of the things Gwenn has done? So the first thing, of course, is you need to learn how to tell stories. And stories give the person who's looking at your art context. They might look at your piece of art and they might not really understand what it's about. They might not understand why you chose to use the colors you use. They might not understand what the story is in the art. But if you can give them a little bit of context, and like Gwenn did, saying that these pieces of art came out of her struggles with gender identity issues, then that gives people something to say, oh, and they grasp onto that and they can tell the story to their friends. Giving people a little bit of an understanding of the process. In these videos that Gwenn put out, she would show people the different layers of the paintings and show people how they came together. People are fascinated by the artistic process. Things that we as artists take for granted, other people think is truly interesting. Giving people a history of the piece, helping them understand, it was a 2-year process from the time that Gwenn started her Kickstarter campaign to get the everything done to now. So there's a history. You can go back and look at her blog and see all the different things that she's done, all the things that she's tried. And then finally, it personalizes the art. It's not just some random piece of art. It's something that has a personal story and meaning to the artist. And that meaning and that emotional connection transfers to the collector when they're looking at the art and when they're interacting with Gwenn's story. I call this whole process together sharing your uniquity. It's the thing that makes you who you are, the unique ability that you have that nobody else in the world has. And every artist has this. If you're making art that is true to who you are and comes out of that place in you that drives you to create art, if you can share that unique part of you, you will find that people will not only respond to your art better, but they'll respond to your blog posts, they'll respond to your social media shares. That unique and genuine part of you is really important. And Luz, I know that you talk about this in your ebook, which we're going to talk about in a little bit more, but I think you have some good stories about finding that the more authentic that you have been with your voice, people have responded better.
Right, right, absolutely. And just to go back to some of the stuff that you were saying before,
Mm-hmm.
when you were talking about advertising sort of being more effective when it doesn't really look like advertising, I think we're sort of just so bombarded by content as it is
Mm-hmm.
that as a whole, we're just trained to really be able to tell when somebody's being phony and just trying to push something on you.
Mm-hmm.
But when there's a real human connection and a story behind whatever it is, especially with art, people it's completely a different experience, and it's something I've experienced on my own where it's not only people supporting you, but people encouraging you in a way that fuels your work.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's really what I want to get to today is helping artists like you and all those who are listening understand that when you're marketing is not, it doesn't have to be sleazy, right? Like it can be just genuinely sharing a heartfelt reason that you create the art that you create. So let's talk a little bit about how one artist did this. She went through Taylor Nichczynski and I started working together a couple years ago, maybe about a year ago. She's based in Nevada and she really loves wildlife art. And so Taylor was trying to figure out, how can I sell more art? She had sold a handful of pieces, and we started really strategizing. How can we be more effective? And one of the first things that we talked about was finding the right people for her to connect with, because one of the biggest mistakes that every artist makes is when I say, well, who are you trying to, who's your ideal collector? And they say, oh, well, everybody's my, I want to sell my art to anybody. And that's just not going to happen. Every artist, not everybody's going to like your art. That's just the way that it is. And that's okay, because what you can do is find the people who are more inclined to like your art. So when Taylor and I were talking, it came out that she really loves creating wildlife art. You can see this coyote that she recently painted here. And she really wanted to do more of that kind of stuff. So we said, okay, well, let's figure out, how can we get you in front of more people who are also fans of wildlife and wildlife art? So she started looking around to say, are there organizations that she can partner with? Are there uh, websites or blogs or social media built around wildlife? And one thing that she found was the Safe Haven Rescue Zoo there in Nevada was doing some interesting things with social media and their mailing list. And so Taylor approached Safe Haven as well as a handful of other wildlife organizations. And she said, hey, I'm really enthusiastic about wildlife. I'd really love to work with you. And they were open to it. And so Taylor started donating a portion of her proceeds to Safe Haven Rescue Zoo. So she was bringing an additional revenue source to them. In return, they were featuring her art on the homepage of their website, in their mailings, and in some of their charity auctions. And this has been tremendously successful for Taylor. She's opened up a huge new audience for herself, people who are naturally inclined to like the kind of art that she makes anyway. And the good thing about it is these organizations that she's partnering with are acting as a filter for her, helping her find the right people without her having to talk to everybody and figure out one-on-one who those right people are. The thing that I really love about this story is, I sort of glossed over the fact that Taylor reached out to a handful of different organizations, and most of them said no. Most of the things that she tried before the Safe Haven Rescue partnership didn't work. And this is a picture that I love. There's a advertising agency here in Portland, Oregon, with this huge sign in their lobby called that says "Fail Harder." And you can't really tell from this picture, but this sign is larger than a person. It's about 10 feet tall, and it's all made of individual push pins. So if you do a Google search for "Fail Harder," you'll see you can see some of the pictures of them putting it together. And so everybody who walks in and out of this ad agency, they see this huge sign that says "Fail Harder." And one of the things that I love that Taylor did, and that I think successful artists do, is they try stuff that probably isn't going to work. Right? You have a crazy idea for your art, and you think, oh, this probably won't work, but I'll try it anyway. And then you go through a couple iterations of that until you find something that works. Marketing is exactly the same way. You have some general ideas of what's good, but those are just general ideas. What actually has to happen is you have to go try things as an artist and see which of those things make sense and which of them resonate with the audience that you have. So I really love this mantra of fail harder. Yeah. Okay, so
Yeah.
let's talk. I'm going to pause here for a second because we've got a handful of questions, and I want to talk to some of those. Um, and Michelle Tuhig says, what kind of percentage are we talking about? Half, like a gallery, or less? I'm not sure what that means exactly. Oh, she says, referring to what percentage Taylor she found she had to. Oh, okay. Michelle, I'm not exactly sure what percentage it was. It was much less than a gallery. So the question Michelle had was, what percentage of her profits was Taylor donating to these wildlife organizations? And it's a relatively small percentage in comparison to what galleries take. Yeah. And let's see. Uh, Cassandra says, I used to talk about a lot about my process until two major collectors told me that collectors aren't interested in process, and that they're only interested in the finished product. Since then, I've de-emphasized process, but you seem to be saying that collectors are interested in process. Very confusing. Which is it? Cassandra, that's a great question. Not every collector is going to be interested in process. And it depends on to what degree we're talking here. I'm not saying that every artist should go immediately open up the entire process and show people every layer of every piece that they've created and show people how they framed it and how they chose their colors and not every detail, but a little bit of details, showing people in their blogs, hey, here's the thing that I'm making, and here's a little blog post about it, and maybe one or two pictures. And doing that over time, it piques people's interest. So not every collector cares about the process, but some collectors do. So what my suggestion to you, again, would be to experiment and see how people react. So let's talk in detail about how art is actually sold on the internet, since we're here to talk about content marketing. So there are a handful of different business models for artists. The first one that everybody is familiar with is art galleries, right? And everybody's familiar with, you hand your art over to the gallery and they go sell it. They take 50% of the sale price and you take the other 50%. Everybody knows about that one. And then as the internet has become more and more popular, you're starting to see more galleries offer their stuff online, or at least display their things online. We're going to talk a little more in detail about how some galleries are doing this. But the big emerging business model for artists is direct to fan or direct to collector. And this is simply artists taking their art and marketing it directly to the end collector. And this has caused, for some artists, this is very, very successful. But a lot of artists are starting to wonder, how can I do this myself? And there's a lot of questions coming up. Who am I supposed to be writing to? Are traditional art collectors that have lots of money, are they buying this way? The answer to that, by the way, is yes. It just depends on the individual collector. Some collectors only go through the big high end art galleries, but a lot of people are starting to buy directly from the artist. Products and prints. Some artists choose to create their own calendars, maybe create an ebook, an illustrated ebook with their art in it. That's becoming a very popular way for artists to make money. Another great business model for artists is commissions, where maybe you have a section on your website that shows people some of the commission work you've done and the details of your commissions, and then licensing. This is giving companies the right to essentially rent your art or lease your art and put it on their product so that they can turn around and sell those products. And it might be anything from mugs, coffee cups, to art easels, to calendars, to big high-end fashion. It can be all over the place. So we're going to talk a little bit more about how some artists do these different business models. Xanadu Art Gallery, run by Jason Horace, is based in Arizona. And Jason shared with us on a recent episode of our podcast, Creative Insurgents, that a couple of years ago, they decided that e-commerce was going to become really important. And they started offering a way for people to buy art on their website. And a couple days after they pushed this live on their website, Xanadu is a fairly successful gallery, so they had a mailing list and they had a group of people who bought from them already. But they found just a few days after they pushed this live on the internet that somebody went ahead and purchased an $8,500 piece of art sight unseen. Xanadu Gallery is in Xanadu Gallery is in Arizona, and the couple who bought the art from them is in Georgia. They had never seen it in person. They just saw it on the website. They liked it. They bought it, and they shipped it off, and it was all good. Since then, Xanadu's had a number of sales like that. So if you are going to partner with a gallery, I would highly suggest that you find a gallery that is savvy about the internet the way that Xanadu Gallery is. Next example, this is a great example of direct to fan or direct to collector marketing. Melissa Dinwiddie, who is my business partner and a very savvy artist in her own right, has been running KatubaWorks.com for a number of years. And Melissa does illuminated ketubah, which are Jewish wedding contracts, if you don't know that. And Melissa, basically, you go to her website and you can sign up for any of her sort of pre-created ketubah that she can then customize, or you can sign up for a fully custom ketubah that she illuminates and does calligraphy by hand. And this has been a moneymaker and a money generator for her for a number of years. Melissa also sells her original art pieces called Art Sparks through another website and through social media like Facebook. Commission art. Anne Ray is a great example of an artist who really gets marketing. When she transitioned from her previous career to art, she had $100,000 in sales in her first year, and a big part of it is these videos and online marketing that she does. Anne Ray, if you go to her website and you go to the commission section, you'll see a video, and it's literally just a 3-minute video of Anne talking about the commission process, about how she decides to take on commission clients, about what the experience of doing a commission with her is like. And basically, she gives the collector an idea of what it's like to work with her so that they can decide whether or not they want to work with her. And that's great for two reasons. The people who are potentially interested are going to become more interested, and the people who aren't her right client are going to filter themselves out so that she doesn't have to work with them. Whoops.
I love that idea of having that video centered there so that they
Mm-hmm.
already know exactly what to expect and there's no questions and
Yeah.
she can really handle that.
Yep. So if you are an artist, if you don't feel comfortable with e-commerce, or you don't have the technical expertise or the money to pay somebody to get that up for you, then I would highly recommend that you at least have a website that has a high quality gallery in it. Ada Horn's website, it's just adahorn.com, is a great website that shows off her art. She's a watercolor artist based in Hawaii. It shows off her art in nice big images. If you click through to the individual page on each of these images, you'll see uh, nice large versions of the image that a gallery owner or a curator or a collector can view so that they can decide whether or not they want to see more of that artist's work and potentially include them in a collection or a show. So Jude asks, how did Xanadu Gallery find that collector in Georgia? So that collector in Georgia was either somebody that was already on their mailing list, or they just found them through a random Google search, which definitely happens. So how do you decide, out of all of these different ways of selling art over the internet, how do you decide which one's right for you? Um, Basically, again, trying them is a great idea. But let's talk a little bit about how what resonates with you as an artist. If you are the kind of artist that wants to be constantly dealing with people face to face, and you want to shake hands and you want to talk to people before you sell them a piece of art, then perhaps simply just having a gallery of your art, uh, and then pointing people to a live gallery where they can go and see the art in person, that might be the right fit for you. But if you have prints of your art and you want to sell replicas or giclée prints of your art, and you want people to be able to just punch in a credit card number and send and you can send that art to them without ever having to interact with them, e-commerce over the internet is the way to do that. So let's talk about how to get started with creating a high quality website. And Robert says, how do you drive traffic to your website, blog, Facebook fan page? That's a great question. We're going to talk about that here momentarily, Robert. So the first step to selling art online is to have a high quality website. So a lot of artists ask me, which art website company should I go with? Should I go with Fine Art Studios Online? Should I go with Folio Link or Artspan? In my opinion, any of these companies offer a quality product. The difference between an artist website company and having a website custom built, a custom built website is always going to look better, because the designer is going to be able to take your feedback and create exactly what you want. But it's going to be expensive. However, with an artist website company like Fine Art Studios Online or Folio Link or Squarespace, uh, they have pre-generated templates. They're relatively inexpensive because there's no custom work being done, and they make the back end management of your art relatively easy. My personal favorite right now for artist website companies is Squarespace, but that might change next week or next month. So the biggest reason artist websites fail is that artists try to make the website a piece of art itself. Or they try to make it pretty or fancy or give it some silly feature that sets it apart. But what you have to understand is that effective artist websites are a sales tool, not a work of art in and of themselves. The emphasis should be on your art, not the website itself. So if you want to sell your art, you need to keep your website itself simple. Have a simple header with your logo and some simple navigation, 4 or 5 links, maybe your home, about page, a link to your portfolio, and a way to contact you. And then the body, which is usually going to be images. If you're an artist and you have a website, your website should be image heavy. It should be mostly about the art and the images. And then a footer. In the footer, you're usually going to have something like your mailing list, a way to contact you, and maybe some additional links to your blog or things like that. And then optionally, you might have a sidebar. This is usually a sidebar is the latest news, the latest content, the any dynamic or changing information. So some more details about how to make your artist website effective. You'll notice this is Kelly Ray Roberts, another artist in Portland, Oregon, who's very, very successful. So Kelly's had, according to her website, she's had over $10 million in licensing sales in the last few years. And a big part of that is how nicely Kelly's website is laid out. You'll see the website up on the top right-hand corner. She's got a newsletter sign in. Every artist should have a newsletter. Your mailing list is the most important way that you're going to get sales. You'll see the clean navigation, a white background with dark lettering that's easy to read. She's got a lot going on there, but that's because Kelly has a lot going on. If you're a beginning artist, I'd recommend your navigation didn't have more than 4 or 5 links. And then this is probably the most effective thing about her website is right there on the homepage. It tells you exactly who Kelly is and what she's about. You see the mixed media collage work that she does, the messaging in her art that says beauty is mandatory. Kelly's background is she used to be a social worker before she became an artist, and she really believes that positive messages are important, and so she puts that up front and center in her art and on her website. And then down at the bottom, you'll see these additional options. If somebody's new to the website, she tells them where to go. If somebody is, if a repeat visitor can see what Kelly's currently loving, and then she has special offers just for people who are recurring visitors to her website. Some e-commerce. Let's take a look at effective e-commerce. So Natasha Westcoat is an artist who's been selling online basically since like 2004. She's had e-commerce options for her website. You'll see the title of the piece right there, Original Swirly Pink Tree. Somebody asked about driving traffic to your website. This is a this is an important piece of that because Google's going to look at this page and they're going to look at the title of that piece and say, okay, the title of this art is Original Swirly Pink Tree Landscape, 8x10 print by Natasha Westcoat. So when people are looking for Natasha Westcoat pieces, or if they're looking for some sort of tree or something with swirly pink in it, those are the kind of things that Google's going to pick up on. You also notice that she's got a big, huge orange add to cart button. I see a lot of artist websites that offer e-commerce, but the add to cart button's down at the bottom of the page so you can't see it, or maybe it's just a link instead of a button. There should be a big, really obvious way of buying art. So now we're getting a whole bunch of questions. People are asking tons of questions. So Michelle says, if you're a digital artist and keep the originals, do you recommend starting with Fine Art America, then creating your own web gallery? That's a great question, Michelle. If you are very, very beginner web artist and you don't have a website yet, Fine Art America is a great way to get started selling prints. And then I think down the road, yeah, absolutely, go ahead and get your own e-commerce up and running. Best way to build your mailing list. We're going to talk about that, Jessica. Jorge says, what's the difference between a newsletter and a blog? We're going to talk about that. Kelly's last name, so Kelly Ray Roberts. And then Barbara Mull says, what could special options to offer someone who goes to my website? That's a great question. And we're going to get into that too. Hannelore says, which WordPress themes are my current favorites? Hannelore, you can go to my website and see my list of current WordPress themes. So other thing to notice about this e-commerce page, there's a nice big picture of the art. A lot of artists make the mistake of only having a tiny little picture like the one that's on the right-hand side there. You want to have a nice big picture of your art so that people can see what they're buying. And then, of course, further down the page, there's a longer description so people can get a full idea of how big the piece is and how it might fit into their home. So a lot of people ask me in these webinars about search engine optimization. If you notice on the top right-hand corner there, there's something that says colorful capitals Katuba. So you'll see this again as a screenshot from Melissa Dinwiddie's website. That colorful capitals Katuba, that's what Google thinks your website is about. And that is pulled from the title of your page. So when you're editing your website, be very, very careful about how you title each web page, because that title is what Google thinks that your web page is about. And that's what it's going to come up for in searches. So there's a small difference in the way that you title your art and the way that you title something on a web page. Each individual piece of art, like we showed you in the previous example, should have its own page on the website. And the title of that individual page should be something, think about what people are typing in, and that should be the title of that page so that you can potentially get search traffic. And then, of course, you want to have some additional descriptions on the page so that search engines can get a little bit more information about what is on that web page. Another thing that I want to bring up that I think is super important is mobile responsiveness. So most of you who are listening on this webinar probably have some sort of mobile device, either a mobile phone or a tablet of some kind, whether it's an iPad or an Android tablet or something else. Right now, about 30 to 40% of all website traffic worldwide is on mobile phones and tablets. So if you think about if you're out on the street and you see something that you really like, you're going to pull up your smartphone and you're going to punch in that thing and search it so that you can find out a little bit more about it before you buy it. Or if you're sitting at home in front of the TV, you might be browsing on your tablet. That's a lot of what mobile-based traffic. So your website should have what's called mobile responsiveness. So when you're looking at a designer to design your website, or if you're looking at an artist website company, make sure that any theme or website that you have built is responsive so that it looks good on a mobile device. Elizabeth says, what is the maximum number of keywords and keyword phrases that you recommend? Great question, Elizabeth. For when you're talking about the titles for your web pages and you're looking at search engines, I would recommend that each page have one primary keyword and then maybe one or two additional tertiary keywords. So if we're going back and looking at Natasha's website, again, she had the pink swirly 8x10 print. I think pink swirly print is probably the keywords there, and everything else is maybe a little bit too much. But pink swirly print is probably the ideal there. Whew. I'm gonna take a drink of water. Am I making sense here, Luz?
Oh, yeah, no, this is great. And I think it's really important to think about this stuff from kind of a marketing perspective, because when you're the artist type, you really want everything to kind of sound and look cool, and
Mm-hmm.
it's like you were talking about earlier, you can really fail by trying to make the website itself a piece of art, whether it's in how you're titling things or
Mm-hmm.
in how you're setting them on the page itself. So very,
Uh,
very important.
Absolutely. And again, using that artist imagination and thinking about, what do I think that the experience is going to be like from the person viewing my art and viewing my website.
Right, right,
So
exactly.
yeah, one of the things that I want to get across before we jump into things like driving traffic to the website in more detail or social media or any of the other stuff is I'm hoping I'm making it clear that your art and your website should be the center of your world. Um, you know, if you're investing all your time in social media, if you're spending all your time building up a Facebook or a Twitter page, or spending all your time on Fine Art America, these are all great tools. There's nothing wrong with using them. But what happens if they go away? What happens if Facebook suddenly decides, for whatever reason, they don't like artists? So then you've invested a whole bunch of time and money and effort into building up your presence there, and then it's just gone because Facebook decided so. We call that digital sharecropping because you're renting somebody else's space. And So I always recommend that every artist should have a solid website and a mailing list that they're building up, because you can own those things. And no matter what happens to the rest of your marketing, you'll always have those things. They're under your control. So let's talk a little bit about social media. We're going to talk about Facebook first because Facebook's a great example and everybody knows Facebook. There's over 1 billion people there. Talk a little bit about 2 artists who I really admire on Facebook, Natasha Westcoat and April Andrade. And you can see that you know, if you go to their websites, they have thousands of fans following them on Facebook. And they've both done very, very well selling art on Facebook and making a career out of selling it that way. One of the things that has been very successful for them is engaging with their audience. If you're simply posting a picture of your art and saying, hey, come buy my art, that's sort of annoying. If you can imagine going to a party and there's an artist walking around handing out business cards to everybody and saying, hey, buy my art, and that's all they're talking about, pretty soon everybody's just going to want to stop talking to that person, and they might even get asked to leave. So you have to think about social media as a place to be social and to bring up selling when appropriate. So the ways you can do that are by asking people questions, asking them to share what's your favorite art, what kind of stuff do you enjoy doing, share your art process, share stuff that you've worked on before. Of course, share with people that you might have shows coming up, and share with them new pieces that you're completing, but that shouldn't be your entire conversation. I like to recommend about an 80-20 proportion of how you interact with people. 80% should be interesting, fun engagement, and 20% should be sales. And that doesn't mean you have to be spending tons of time on social media. What that means is that I tell people, spend 15 minutes a day on your Facebook page and schedule a handful of questions and a handful of posts that might go out, 1 or 2 posts a day, and make 20% of those be something about your art and something about sales. A couple people are saying they're having technical difficulties. You might want to check your internet connection or log out and log back in. So when talking about social media, I mentioned already the 80-20 rule of social media. Something that is really, really effective that I see very few artists doing is curating content. So you're probably all familiar with the idea of curating an art show. Maybe a museum or a gallery asks you to come on board and be a curator of a show where you find a handful of your favorite artists and do a show of their work. You can do the same thing on social media, and you don't have to be invited to do it. If you become known for introducing people to cool art or to cool experiences on the internet, then people will naturally gravitate towards you and follow you. And then when in that 20% of the time when you're introducing your work, people are going to be receptive to that because they know that you have good taste and that you are trying to create good experiences for them. And I hammer on this over and over because I see people in other industries doing this, curating great content from their industries, but the art world tends to not do that very much. The art magazines do it. You've got the magazines out there showing off great artists, but I think that artists can really benefit from doing that.
Yeah, definitely. Even if it's just sharing somebody's work who you admire and kind of helping them out in that way. I've had a lot of interactions with other artists where we've just begun promoting each other's stuff, and that
Mm-hmm.
can also be very valuable.
Mm-hmm. Michelle says, should I be curating on my blog or on Facebook? My preference would be that you curate a show on your blog and you use Facebook and other social media as a way of letting people know about it. Yeah. So Phil says, ooh, this is such a great question. Phil, I'm so glad you asked this question. I should have thought of putting this up here. How do you curate other artists without potentially detracting from your own business? So, Phil, this is a case of a rising tide lifts all boats. If you start, if you share your art, if you share somebody else's art, people will be appreciative that you introduced them to a new experience and a new artist. And the odds are, if you feature an artist on your website, that artist that you featured is probably going to be flattered, and they might even share it with their audience. So not only are you helping them, but if they share it, they're going to turn around and help you. And as more and more artists start to do this, this sharing economy, the economy of sharing everybody's work, is going to lift everybody up. And you'll start to see people emerge where certain artists who are genuinely really good are going to get shared by more and more other artists. And that's the kind of stuff that the internet was made to do. Um, Luz, you were just
Exactly.
talking about how you and some other artists are sharing each other's content. Maybe you should share a little of that experience.
Yeah, so one of the really cool experiences that I've had with this was there's an artist by the name of Alice Savage, and she does this incredible sort of calligraphy, very pointillism, super detailed ink work that I'm in love with. And I've spent a lot of time just following her because I loved watching the stuff that she was sharing.
Mm-hmm.
And shortly you start to communicate and you start to kind of develop a relationship. And as I started sharing her stuff, she basically just started sharing mine, and I started seeing kind of more traffic going to those posts on my like art page for my Facebook. And it was very interesting to me to see that we have very similar work. So we're
Mm-hmm.
both using ink and watercolor. We're both doing the same kinds of things in that area, but what she does and what I do are completely different and very unique to us. So it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't really detract attention. If anything, it just, like you're saying, it enhances the experience.
Yep. Yep. And that's absolutely true. And quite frequently, collectors like to buy art that is of a certain type, right? Like, um, I happen to, it's funny, if you look at my Pinterest page and you look at the art that I like, it all tends to be like paintings in bright colors, a lot of reds and bright blues. And a lot of it is like women and abstract nature. And that's not intentional on my part. It's just the art that I like. And so a lot of artists who do similar work, but I love all of it, right? And so I don't I think that sharing is going to become the way that in 2014 sharing is going to become the way that artists sell their art online. Yeah. Jessica says, "Is it okay to share other people's YouTube videos on my blog?" Absolutely. YouTube videos were made to be shared. Use the embed codes that are right there on the YouTube videos. Nicole says, if you use large pictures of your artwork on your website or Facebook, do you recommend watermarking it? Yeah, absolutely. There's nothing wrong with putting a watermark on your art. So, Luz, I want to share some cool case studies from some people that have done some neat things on the web. So, Natasha, I mentioned that she's done a lot of selling on Facebook. So she did this contest where she posted a picture of her art and she asked everybody on her Facebook page to tag themselves um, in the photo and then share that photo with their own audience. And what she did is she said, the person who gets the most likes for that photo will win one of my prints. So she had over 100 people share that piece of art, and the winner had 200 likes on that individual piece of art. So if you can imagine, like 100 shares times 200 likes per share, the potential number of people that saw Natasha's art just for the cost of her giving away a print, absolutely huge, right? And this is the way that Natasha's been able to grow her Facebook fan page by the thousands. Mm-hmm. Kiri says Natasha's tagging idea is against Facebook's rules, though. It's actually not anymore. Facebook changed that a few months ago. So there are a lot more artists doing it now. Hannelore is an artist who took a course from me last year, and Hannelore was the kind of artist who she was maybe a little bit afraid of putting herself out there on the internet. She had ideas and she was a passionate artist, and but she was afraid of saying, hey, this is me and this is who I am. So one of the things that Hannelore and I talked about was, you really got to start putting yourself out there. So she set up a website and a blog and some social media accounts, and she started uh, interacting more with people. And there was a call for a poem on the Rolling Stone Politics blog, and it was about the housing scandal and about how Chase Bank executives uh, were not being prosecuted. And Hannelore submitted this haiku: "My mom wants to know how you like her house, her porch, her climbing roses." Very simple haiku. That haiku got featured in Rolling Stone Politics magazine blog. Um, so it
It's
was,
pretty awesome.
yeah. I mean, being featured in Rolling Stone was just awesome. Yeah. Um, Here's another good one from Anita. Anita says, so Anita, I wrote a blog post several months ago about selling art before it was finished, and I asked for some examples of artists who've had that kind of experience. And Anita sent in this experience. I kind of distilled it down, but she was talking about how she has a mailing list, and she would let her mailing list know that she was working on these purse pieces. And one person wrote to her and said, "Hey, I'm interested in this." And Anita said, "Great, here's a picture of it." And a handful of other people said that they were interested. So she started sending out pics of the pieces, the purses, and the artwork in progress. And she actually sold them all before she even completed them. She had the money
That's
in hand
amazing.
before they were done. Yeah. But the really good one that I want to show is from an artist named Ada Horn. I mentioned her earlier. Ada is a watercolor artist based in Hawaii, and for years, Ada had painted at hotels and some other places and sort of found collectors that way. But she wanted to make some changes. She wanted to move. She wanted to change the way that she always, she didn't want to have to always be in the hotel. And so we talked about taking her business online and making it more effective that way. And so, Ada had been an artist for a number of years. So we worked together. We compiled all of her collector lists into a spreadsheet, and we separated them out into important collectors who had purchased from her multiple times, and other people who had maybe only purchased from her once or who had expressed strong interest. And then we put together a series of emails um, where Ada sort of let people know that she had this new website coming and that she was going to start a newsletter and that she was going to try to make the newsletter really helpful to her collectors. And she was positioning herself as being a really valuable resource for her collectors. And here's a screenshot of one of the first emails that she sent out, which was all about how to light her art, right? And so she gave people a breakdown on the difference between incandescent and halogen lights and different fixture styles that people could use to light her art. And this one email that she sent out, this was actually the second or third email. She sent an email out letting everybody know that she was going to do it, and then she sent this email out. But what happened is at the end of each of those emails, she would put a little call to action. She'd have a picture of her piece of art and a sentence that says, "To order any of my pieces, click here, go to my website, or email me, and we can take care of payments and shipping." And what happened was from that first set of emails, she made $3,500. She sold two originals for over 700, and then she also got a huge commission from an existing collector, somebody who had already purchased from her, and she also received inquiries about additional commissions. So simply getting a website up and putting together a few emails was a huge success for Ada. Now, obviously, Ada had been an artist for a while and she'd already sold quite a bit of art. And so these were people that she had a relationship with. But you don't have to have a large list of former collectors in order to be successful. Everybody builds their own success one step at a time. So I really love that story from Ada, and I think that it's a great example of what can happen if you just take action and move forward to make things happen. So
Absolutely.
yeah. Before I talk a little bit about the course that we have coming up in February, I want to see if anybody has any questions from what we've talked about so far. So if you do have questions, feel free to pop those into the question box. Um, Elizabeth says, "Is the collection of email addresses for the purpose of sending a newsletter?" Yeah, absolutely. Alex says, my husband and I have a blog about our art and we sell on Etsy. We've had a few people like certain of our images. Should we use these people to market our blog to? Yeah, absolutely. So Alex, something that I've seen people do very effectively on Facebook and Etsy and other places is reaching out to people who liked particular pieces of art and just not in a salesy way, just saying, hey, thanks for liking that. Let me know if I can answer any questions you have about any of this stuff. Hannelore says, will there be a recording? Yes, absolutely. Marianne says, do you have any specific advice for photographers? Marianne, I'm not any of the things that I've mentioned here would work for photographers. Getting a high quality website up and getting a mailing list up and using social media for distribution will definitely help you. If you have any more specific questions than that, I'm happy to address that. Nancy says, if I'm marketing my husband's art, how can I speak about the art in a genuine voice? Um, he's not a computer guy and he works full time during the day. Nancy, I would say that you need to draw those stories out of him. If you're marketing art for somebody else, this is what successful galleries and auction houses do: is they get the story out of the artist and then tell that story on the artist's behalf. Ruth says, I'd like to know more about types of content collectors want to hear other than about lighting. More topics. Okay, yeah, those are great questions. So in addition to sort of the technical details about how to hang and frame and light art, people want to know about you. They want to know about what your inspiration is. I mentioned at the very top of the call, Natasha Westcoat, or excuse me, not Natasha, Gwenn. I mentioned at the top of the call about Gwenn, about how she talked about why she created the Crime Against Nature series, about her own struggles with infertility issues and femininity. It's a hard word to say. Femininity. Those are the kinds of things that people are interested in. They just want a little context and a little emotional connection to the art. Diane says, I send a weekly newsletter. Is that too often? Great question, Diana. I would say it's not about sending a weekly versus monthly or whatever. It's about how much value are you adding. Some artists send daily. There's an artist named Jolie Gillabo who does daily paintings, and she sends an email out every day with a short little story about the painting. And she's done that every day for 4 years. She's literally sent like 1,000 emails about her art. Shannon says, any advice for getting copyrighted? Shannon, you can register your copyright with the U.S. Copyright Office. Should you do that before publishing your website? No, just watermark your art. I wouldn't worry about it too much. Can you damage your reputation as an artist by marketing online? Claire, that's a good question. I would say that if you are an artist who is already having a lot of success selling with galleries, you may want to talk to the gallery before you market yourself online. Different galleries have different policies. You're not going to damage your reputation as an artist. You might damage your relationship with your gallery. So be careful of that. Let's see. Cheryl says, is it effective to put links on a website blog on Facebook instead of putting it on Facebook directly? I'm not sure what that means, Cheryl. Betty says, I'm a digital artist, which means there is no original, but each piece is hand embellished with a limited edition. I have a tough time marketing to more traditional collectors or explaining the value. Any suggestions? Betty, I don't know what the subject matter of your art is, but I would find communities that are interested in the subject matter. So like Taylor Nichczynski did with her wildlife art, I would suggest that you find people who are interested in the subject matter of your art and market to them. Bruce says, is it good to sell online on multiple sites? Fine Art America, Etsy, Redbubble. Yeah, absolutely. So Bruce, I love that question. You know, should I be on Fine Art America or Etsy or Redbubble? Which of those should I be on? I think the answer to that is probably all of them, but you want to have a limited presence on all of them. You maybe have one piece on Fine Art America that you can't get anywhere else, another piece on Etsy that you can't get anywhere else. And then the large bulk of your work is all on your website. So you use all those different websites as distribution points to get back to your site. Nancy, do you ghostwrite as him? Yeah. I mean, I don't think you necessarily need to ghostwrite as him. I think you can say, you know, hey, I'm Nancy and this is my husband's work and this is his story. I think that's perfectly fine.
I think it's actually really cool to have kind of like a family thing going on to what you do because that's part of your story too. So if you're helping him do this because you believe in his work,
Hmm.
that's part of what makes your unique sort of presentation special.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
as somebody who's buying, I would want to know about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can, there are actually lots of husband and wife teams, husband and wife artist teams out there. And I think that's a super effective way to do it. Jessica says, is blogging the best way to build your email list? Yes. uh, difference between content on blog versus newsletter versus Facebook. It all starts the same to me. You know, you're right to a certain extent, Sarah. It is the same, but it's a difference in how the content is presented. And email is by far the most effective for getting people to take action, to go buy something.
I think it's good to just think about how you consume those different things because when you're on
Mm-hmm.
Facebook, you're just kind of like hanging out, looking at your friends' stuff, and trying
Yeah,
to have fun. When you're
yeah, and
checking your email, you're more likely to stay. Sorry.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. People get lost in their inbox all the time. First thing people do when they wake up in the morning is they either check Facebook or email, depending on how old they are, and then that sets the tone for the rest of their day. And I think this is a great segue into talking about the content marketing for artists course. Um, we address in the course that we're doing starting in February is all about the stuff that I'm talking about. In the course, we're going to talk about learning to tell stories effectively, like artists like Gwen or Kelly or you, Luz. How do you stand out from other artists? How do you stand out from other ink and watercolor artists, like you were talking about earlier in the webinar? You know, there's ways to do that effectively. How do you create buzz and sales? How do you get people talking about an upcoming show you have? How do you get people talking about uh, how do you get people talking about your art? There's this artist in Sonoma, California, Chris Henry. He just got his he just got approached by a media organization to create a backdrop for their very popular TV show. And it was so easy to make that opportunity happen. He just had to be shown, how to do it. And it literally, we'll talk more about it in the course, but it's funny to see how easy that kind of stuff is to make happen. And then I think, when we did this course last year, a lot of artists were feeling a little, maybe a little overwhelmed and like it's too hard. So one of my goals this year is to show you how marketing and how selling your art online can be really fun and be authentic. And the more fun you're having and the more authentic you can be with what you're doing, the more effective it's going to be, right? Um, and so a lot of these people are like, marketing seems so hard, but it's actually not that hard, and it can actually be a lot of fun. So a couple more details about the course. People have all these questions. I'm going to go through a little of this, and I think a lot of the questions are going to be answered. Um, so the course starts February 3rd and goes through the end of March. The live sessions will go that way. Basically, what's going to happen is we're going to alternate each week between lessons and implementation. So the first week, we're going to talk all about how to turn your art process into marketing material. So we're going to go through documenting the process of creating a piece of art. And then we're going to take a couple pieces of those, maybe one or two pictures, maybe a journal entry about creating the art, and learn how to turn those into blog posts, and then turn the blog posts into effective emails and turn the emails into effective social media posts. We're going to go through that. And so the first week, we're going to talk about just the process of creating the content. And then you're going to have the rest of the week to go work on it. And then in week 2, we're going to do a Q&A call, very much like what we're doing right now, where people can share their experiences of going through that process. We'll do feedback, and then we'll go back and reiterate and rework on that content. And then in week 3, we're going to talk about how to make your website effective, how to make sure your website is designed well, how to make sure it's stable, how to make sure that your website is talking about the things that people want to know about. And then we're going to give you a week to work on your website, and then we're going to come back and revisit the website and give you a few more days to work on it. And then in week what is that, week 5, we're going to talk about email marketing and blogging. And then in week 7, we're going to talk about social media and wrap up. So the goal is in those 2 months, you're going to completely transform your art business from wherever it's at now to being a lot more effective and a lot more fun in the day to day execution of your marketing. Um, I'm also going to be sharing with everybody. I have this big long checklist that covers all the bullet points you can see here on the website. If you want to sign up for the course now, if it sounds great, you can go to theabundantartist.com/content and sign up for the course. And we go into great detail about all of this. And once you sign up for the course, you'll get an email from me that has a little more details. Also, some really fun bonuses, things that we're going to be giving away. Margaret says, do you need to upload all of these, all the art to these other sites regularly in order to stay at the top of the heap and be seen? Margaret, that's a great question. Each site handles it a little bit differently. Etsy is definitely that way. Fine Art America is becoming that way. It depends on the site. Nancy Funk says, okay, thanks. I thought it was weird to answer people on his Facebook in my voice. I don't think so. As long as people know what's going on. Let's see. Natalie says, which programs have you found best for putting newsletter email entry bars and then add to cart buttons? So I use MailChimp.com for my mailing list management. And then I use PayPal for payment processing. So that's pretty easy. Leslie says, does having a very occasional sale of prints a good idea, or would it damage your image of a fine artist? Leslie, I would say that if you think about some of the most well-known artists like Picasso or Damien Hirst or other well-known famous artists, they sell tons and tons of prints, and it hasn't hurt their reputation as an artist at all. Barbara, is the Astoria, Oregon course similar to this? Great question. Yes, we're going to spend 2 days going into this in detail live. Ruth Collis says, in terms of success, is it really possible to maintain a blog, newsletter for collectors, newsletter for teaching students, Facebook fan page? Can you maintain all of those different things? Basically, Ruth, you're maintaining multiple businesses. Is it really possible to do this? I would suggest, Ruth, that maybe we talk a little bit, because I think you're maybe trying to do too much. I would look at how you're spending your time and where most of your money is coming from and optimize around that. Amy Ventura says, is there a discount on the course for lifetime members? There are no discounts for this course. This is a completely separate course from anything else that I've done. Tiffany says, I think she means that at times if you put addresses from Instagram. Oh yeah, okay. Marianne says, if you have sold the occasional piece for high price through a gallery and a group show, can you market other pieces for less on the internet? Will this hurt you? Marianne, that's a great question. I would look at any galleries that you've partnered with. Make sure that you're not undercutting the pricing of your gallery. Make sure that your pricing stays consistent. Just because you're selling it online doesn't mean that you necessarily have to sell it for less. You can sell another line of work or other smaller pieces online for less if you're looking for a smaller price point that sells easier. But just because you're selling it online doesn't mean you have to sell it for less.
Absolutely. There's no reason to assume that makes it somehow cheaper, that people aren't willing to spend money online, because they
Yeah.
definitely are.
Yeah. I mean, like I mentioned earlier, Xanadu Gallery is selling that piece for $8,500. Amazon's art project is selling pieces for high 5 figures, low 6 figures. So there are lots of expensive art being sold online. Betty says, will the course be available later? Yes. So Betty, all of the course material is going to be recorded and available for you later, so you can catch up, or you can purchase the course and do it at your own pace. The idea being that you can join us live at your leisure. How much is the course? Jorge, great question. It's $297. Kimberly says, if you don't already have a relationship with a gallery, are you hamstringing yourself by marketing yourself online? No. Kimberly, if you build up a huge following of people online, you are actually going to get more interest from galleries. There is an artist in Australia by the name of Hazel Dooney who is tremendously successful in selling her art independently. And she frequently blogs about turning down requests from galleries because she would prefer to be an independent artist. But if you are if you show that you can sell and that you can make money and that your prices are comparable with gallery prices, the galleries will come to you. Ellen says, do you recommend always listing prices online? Uh, yes, with caveats. I think listing your prices, if you want to sell directly from your website, yeah, you should absolutely list your prices. Janet says, I am not familiar with watermarking artwork. How do you do this? So it's the same place that whatever software you're using to render digital images before you upload them to your website, you just want to, if it's Photoshop or GIMP, or there are a handful of other tools that will do it. You can just do a Google search for how to watermark my images, and there are tons and tons of tools. Margaret says, will you be repeating this course? Yes, I will be repeating the course. But the live course I will not be doing again, probably not this year. But you'll be able to buy the downloads later. No problem, Ruth. Thanks for being here. Michelle, Art Empowers is really a beginner's course. It's showing people how to get started. This is a course for that. Well, I should go to this next slide. This course is for you if you feel comfortable doing things like adding attachments and you have basic writing skills. If you sold at least a few pieces of art, this is really not the right course for somebody who has never sold anything before, or maybe they sold one piece but they don't really have an idea of what they're doing. You need to be a little bit beyond the beginner stage if this course is going to be effective for you. And you need to be able to do the work from the course without any excuses. A lot of people sign up for courses and then don't do the work and then wonder why they didn't get anything out of it. You want to make sure that you do that, and then you should have a sense of humor. But the Art Empowers course is really for the very, very beginners. Tiffany says, besides the share my picture with your friends, are there other ideas you have to move beyond my friend list to gain more interest in Facebook and other social medias? Yeah, absolutely, Tiffany. The course that we're doing is going to go into that in detail. So I'd love to have you in the course. I think that we could do a lot of good together. Barbara says, do I have experience selling art through Amazon? No, I don't. So that's basically it. For those of you who are in there signing up for the course now, and there's a couple people that have signed up already, so thank you. There are a couple homework assignments that I want you to complete before we get started on February 3rd. I want you to start thinking about what is that piece of art or that series that you've always wanted to create, but you weren't quite sure how to market it or weren't quite sure if it would work. I want you to start thinking about how you would create that piece. And then I want you to start thinking about documenting that piece of art, documenting the steps with images and video if you can, and journaling about it. And then once you've finished completing it, write up a page about where the art came from and what your inspiration was. This will be a good warm-up practice for the first section of the course that we do. And then for those of you who sign up before January 27th, on that day, we are going to be doing a studio spa day with Jen Hoffman from Inspired Home Office, where we actually do a conference call, sort of like this one, and we will get people on the phone. And Jen, who is a professional organizer, who has tons of experience helping artists organize their studios and their offices, we're going to actually help you get your office and your studio organized so that you can be ready for the course when we start in February. Other cool thing that we're doing is we're giving away Luz's book. Luz, why don't you tell us a little bit about self-promotion into self-expression? Because I think that your book goes right to the heart of some of the things we've talked about in today's webinar.
Awesome, yeah. So I'll start with like a little bit of a backstory just on who I am in case you guys haven't heard of me before. I actually started out as a virtual assistant doing social media for online entrepreneurs. There are people who were running webinars like this, who needed some help with marketing and all that sort of stuff, and I really, really liked it, and I really got into it, and I kind of built a business mostly with my own social media channels And that's allowed me to make a living from home doing things that I love. But really, at the heart of it, I just wanted to be an artist. I've always just wanted to make stuff that makes people happy and to sell it. And I think I had a lot of kind of issues around self promotion, even though what I was doing for a living was coaching people and teaching them how to promote themselves. And over the last maybe 6 months or so, what I started to do was just share more of the artwork that I was doing. And because I had already built up a little bit of an audience, I was able to sell literally like I think the first month that I started sharing stuff, I sold something like $1,200 in art stuff, and it taught me a lot, not only about art, but it taught me a lot about self promotion and sort of those emotions that are behind the the hesitance that we have to put ourselves out there. And I know that if you're an artist, you sort of experience this like triple because you have kind of a lot more feelings than everybody
Hmm.
else does, it feels like sometimes. And yeah, and there's a lot of messages in our culture that tell us that art isn't something that is valuable, that there's sort of like a shame associated with selling this kind of stuff, that it's not a quote unquote real job. And even though you've made the decision now to have a business around this, there's still a little echo back there that does that, that talks to you in this negative way. And I think it inhibits us from really taking the steps that we need to take.
Hmm.
So in this book, what I've addressed is both sort of how to get past that, because if we can make things that are very genuine to who we are, we're going to automatically bring forward those people that get us and that are going to be wanting to invest in what we do. And as our work grows and changes and evolves, those people are going to stay with us. um, Talking about whether you had a Facebook page or this or that and keeping your list, a lot of that is so that those people can stay with you as your work grows and continues. So the book has a lot of actionable items. It's
Hmm.
not just fluff. It has a lot of tools in there for you to create content. It has a lot of information on how you can make videos. It actually shows you how to watermark your work
Hmm.
at one point. So really, I made it as a love letter to you and a love letter to me to cement that whole notion that we can be ourselves and be self-expressive, and that action can be also self-promotional.
Absolutely. So again, just to reiterate, Luz, we're giving away a copy of that book to everybody who signs up for the course. Um, and you can sign up for the course at theabundantartist.com/content. And the course will be live. We'll start the course February 3rd, and it'll run through the end of March. And it's going to be a lot of fun. We did this last year, and a lot of people got a lot out of it. And I think this year's version is going to be even better because we've taken everything we've learned from the last year and poured that into the course. And I think this year it's going to be even more actionable and even more accomplishable. So I'm really looking forward to working with everybody who signs up. So again, thank you so much, everybody. Thanks for the people who've signed up already, and I'm looking forward to working with you. And we're going to end the webinar now, unless anybody else has any other questions. And have a great day. Thanks, everybody.